A Dalton home that she leased to Mayor Tiffany Henyard has filed eviction papers. She says Henyard has not paid her rent, and now a storm of controversy, largely due to the tumultuous tenure of Mayor Tiffany Henyard, what was once a community hoping for steady leadership, has instead been embroiled in scandal after scandal, many directly tied to Henyard's contentious actions and decisions. One of the most glaring controversies is Henyard's appointment of a police chief who shockingly lacks the legal qualifications to serve as a police officer. This is just one example of the dysfunction that has come to define her administration from the moment she assumed office. Henyard has been accused of corruption, financial mismanagement, and political favoritism. Critics argue that her leadership approach focuses more on consolidating power at all costs than on governing for the well-being of the town. Henyard's detractors point to numerous allegations, including embezzling taxpayer money, using township resources for personal gain, and making appointments that seem based more on loyalty than on legality or competence. The appointment of an unqualified police chief is a stark example of what many see as Henyard's disregard for proper governance. Public safety, a major concern in Dalton, has been further undermined as reports of delayed emergency responses and mismanaged resources continue to mount. The decision to appoint someone without the proper qualifications to head the police department has raised serious questions about Henyard's ability to lead. Many residents and critics view it as a deliberate act of negligence rather than an unfortunate mistake. Despite the growing chorus of criticism, Henyard has offered little in the way of explanation. Instead, she has deflected accusations, claiming that her critics are merely engaged in politically motivated attacks designed to bring her down. Yet for the residents of Dalton, who live with crumbling infrastructure, rising crime rates, and a local government in disarray, such deflections offer little comfort. Many of Henyard's priorities have raised concerns, with critics accusing her of focusing on consolidating power rather than addressing the town's most pressing needs. Rather than stabilizing the town's deteriorating economy, addressing public safety concerns, or repairing strained relations between the government and residents, Henyard's administration has often been embroiled in public disputes and controversies. Allegations that she has used taxpayer money for personal luxury have only fueled frustrations. Some residents believe she views public office as a vehicle for self-enrichment, pointing to lavish expenditures and questionable policies as evidence of her mismanagement. The controversies surrounding Henyard have turned Dalton into a political spectacle, attracting media coverage beyond the town's borders. Henyard's staunch supporters, however, argue that she is the victim of a smear campaign. They believe she is facing a double standard, with her leadership being scrutinized far more harshly than that of her predecessors. As the first female mayor of Dalton, they argue Henyard is confronting opposition from political insiders who are unwilling to accept a shift in the town's power dynamics. Despite this narrative, Henyard supporters have failed to convince many residents, who are growing increasingly frustrated with the apparent dysfunction surrounding her administration. Henyard's combative leadership style, characterized by fiery speeches and public confrontations, has only deepened the divisions within the community. For many, this has left them questioning whether reconciliation and progress are even possible under her leadership. What has added to the concern is the involvement of outside agencies, including the FBI, which is reportedly investigating Henyard administration. Rumors about financial improprieties and abuse of power have sparked speculation that her legal troubles could deepen significantly if any evidence of misconduct is uncovered. If such allegations are proven, the consequences could be devastating, not just for Henyard, but for the already struggling town of Dalton. For a town of just 200,000, the stakes are incredibly high. Residents are left wondering whether their local government is capable of serving their needs amidst the turmoil that has gripped their community. Henyard's story is one of stark contrasts: a mayor who promised transformation but has instead been mired in controversy, a town that once hoped for stability but now faces chaos, and a leadership dynamic teetering on the brink of collapse. As Dalton continues to make headlines for reasons that overshadow any aspirations for progress, the future remains uncertain. Can Henyard rally her administration and deliver on the promises she made when she first assumed office, or will the mounting scandals and widespread distrust lead to the end of her political career? Only time will tell, but for now, Dalton remains a town in crisis, uncertain of the path ahead. Well, for the first time in many weeks, Dalton trustees and Mayor Tiffany Henyard held a public meeting together, but not Ronald Burge, the controversial figure handpicked by Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard to lead the town's police department, has now been officially deemed inactive by the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board (ILDS). In simpler terms, this means Burge has not met the state's basic requirements to wear a badge, carry a gun, or manage a police force. Despite this bombshell revelation, Mayor Henyard remains unwavering in her support for Burge, refusing to budge on her decision to appoint him as police chief. This latest scandal is just one more chapter in the ongoing drama that has engulfed Dayton, a small town in Illinois that has become the epicenter of controversy and intrigue under Henyard's leadership. For those familiar with Henyard's time as mayor, Burge's appointment fits right into the pattern of her controversial actions, from allegations of misusing taxpayer money for extravagant parties to employing police officers as personal security and even dressing in theatrical outfits reminiscent of gangster movies. Henyard has built a reputation for pushing boundaries and ignoring protocols when it suits her agenda, along with profit for the police experts and health agencies. Her leadership style is characterized by public spectacle and drama, often overshadowing the serious responsibilities that come with running a town. However, the consequences of her antics are far from entertaining for the residents of Dalton, a community already struggling with critical issues such as poverty, infrastructure decay, and rising crime. The controversy surrounding Burge began in September when Henyard announced his appointment as the new chief of police. Almost immediately, the move was met with backlash from the Dalton Village Board of Trustees, who argued that the mayor did not have the unilateral authority to make such an appointment without their formal approval. Despite their objections, Henyard pushed forward, bypassing the usual checks and balances that are supposed to prevent this sort of overreach. Critics viewed her actions as a blatant disregard for governance protocols, a recurring theme throughout her administration. However, what made the situation even more alarming was Burge's lack of qualifications. It turned out that he did not meet the minimum requirements set by Illinois state law to serve as a police officer, let alone lead an entire department. According to state guidelines, police officers must complete rigorous training, maintain certifications, and remain in good standing with the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. Burge's inactive status indicated that he had failed to meet these requirements, raising serious questions about his ability to perform his duties as police chief lawfully and effectively. This revelation only heightened tensions between Henyard, the village board, and the growing number of frustrated residents. Despite the poor Henyard stood by her decision, defending Burge as the right person for the job. She dismissed critics as politically motivated adversaries intent on undermining her authority, yet her defiance did little to quell concerns, and her actions were seen by many as emblematic of her disregard for both governance and public safety. Opponents of Henyard's decision argued that her insistence on keeping Burge in the role was less about leadership and more about consolidating political power. By installing a loyal ally in such a critical position, Henyard could potentially use the police department to further her own political agenda, which some view as a dangerous precedent for any elected official. The implications of this conflict were far-reaching, not just for Burge and Henyard, but for the town of Dalton as a whole. Residents and local leaders feared that the dysfunction emanating from the mayor's office was eroding public trust in local government. The town, already grappling with financial instability, an underfunded school system, and deteriorating public services, did not need yet another political circus on top of these pressing issues. Adding to the tension was the fact that outside entities, including the Illinois Attorney General's office and the FBI, were reportedly monitoring Henyard's administration investigations into her financial dealings, alleged misuse of public resources, and other controversies could potentially result in serious legal consequences for the embattled mayor. And while Henyard continued to deny any wrongdoing and portray herself as the target of a politically motivated smear campaign, the growing list of allegations against her left many questioning how much longer she could continue to weather the storm. In an unexpected turn, the opposition to Burge's appointment reached a boiling point, leading the village board of trustees to take the matter to court in an effort to block the appointment. At one point, it seemed they had succeeded, as a judge issued a temporary restraining order preventing Burge from serving as police chief without the board's approval. However, Henyard was not about to back down. Determined to push her agenda forward, she continued to challenge the board, leading to a highly contentious and chaotic village board meeting. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Burge could serve as interim police chief for 30 days while Henyard and the board worked to determine a permanent replacement. This seemed like a temporary victory for the mayor, but the drama didn't end there. Days after the court's ruling, the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board dropped a bombshell. Ronald Burge was not legally qualified to serve as a police officer, let alone lead a department. According to the ISIT's Burge's formal letter, Burge had failed to complete the necessary paperwork and training required to maintain his certification as a law enforcement officer. Even more troubling, Burge had not passed a requalification shooting exam, a mandatory requirement for carrying a firearm since 2021. The implications of this discovery were staggering. Not only was Burge unqualified to assume the responsibilities of police chief, but he was also legally barred from carrying the weapon for many inland. This revelation validated their concerns about Henyard's decision-making and reinforced the belief that she was prioritizing political loyalty over competent and public safety. Critics accused Henyard of making her choice based on political expedience rather than what was best for the town. They argued that her appointment of Burge was less about finding a qualified leader for the police department and more about consolidating her power. Henyard, however, remained defiant. She continued to defend Burge's appointment, dismissing critics as politically motivated and framing the challenges to his appointment as part of a broader effort to undermine her leadership. Despite her continued defiance, even some of Henyard's Stunmez supporters began to question her judgment. The public disclosure of Burge's lack of qualifications raised serious doubts about her ability to make sound decisions in the best interest of the town. This development added to the growing list of scandals that had already tainted Henyard's time in office, including allegations of misuse of public funds, questions about her personal security detail, and rising tensions with the village board. The atmosphere in Dalton had become increasingly polarized, with the town divided between Henyard's supporter and those who viewed her actions as irresponsible and arrogant. As the fallout from the Burge controversy continues, it raises broader questions about leadership, governance, and transparency in Dalton, with public trust in the local government eroding and new controversies emerging almost daily. The town is left grappling with uncertainty and frustration. Meanwhile, the pressure on Henyard to explain her actions and rebuild her credibility continues to grow. Whether this latest chapter in the Henyard saga will lead to lasting change or simply deepen the divisions within Dalton remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: Henyard and her administration are now firmly under the microscope. The stakes have never been higher, and the future of Dalton hangs in the balance. Word one says 100%, 100% of 100%. To combine mean that could be a lot of different things. What's the administrative costs? When's it going to start? When's it going to end? Just the situation surrounding Ronald Burge's appointment as police chief in Dalton, Illinois, is a stark example of how political decisions can spiral into controversy and public outrage. The individual entrusted with overseeing law enforcement in the town, a role that includes carrying a firearm and managing police operations, is quite remarkably not even legally qualified to perform these duties. It turns out, has not met the necessary requirements to carry a weapon or to serve as a law enforcement officer. His qualifications were questioned after it was revealed he had failed to maintain his training and certification under Illinois law, leaving him legally unable to serve as the head of the police department. Despite this glaring issue, Mayor Tiffany Henyard remains firm in her decision to appoint Burge, a stance that raises serious concerns. This contradiction, where someone clearly unqualified for such an important role is still being kept in position, has left many residents asking why Henyard is so determined to retain him. The answer to that question is complex, and for some deeply troubling. Critics have long pointed to a pattern in Henyard's decision-making when it comes to appointing key officials, with a growing perception that these choices are not based on merit, but rather on loyalty. One resident summed up this feeling with a blunt remark: she hires and recruits people like a mob boss. This comparison, though harsh, reflects a growing sentiment in the community that Henyard's appointments are driven by a desire to build a loyal circle of supporters rather than selecting the most qualified individuals for the job. In Henyard's tenure, she has made several appointments that raise eyebrows due to the questionable backgrounds of those selected, from hiring police officers with dubious histories to placing political allies into powerful roles. It seems as though Henyard's leadership style revolves around loyalty over professionalism. This pattern has been repeatedly cited by critics who argue that her focus on surrounding herself with loyalists rather than qualified professionals has left the town vulnerable. This type of leadership, one that prioritizes loyalty over competence, has significantly undermined the trust residents have in their local government. People are left wondering whether Henyard values political allegiance over the needs and safety of the community she is supposed to serve. While Henyard's defenders may argue that she is simply making bold and unconventional decisions, the public scrutiny surrounding her appointments, particularly the Burge debacle, is growing. The continued focus on her actions only serves to highlight what many view as a troubling trend: that Henyard leadership is based on an insular, self-serving approach to governance. This has created a lack of transparency in her administration, with residents increasingly questioning her ability to make decisions in the best interest of the town. As the Burge controversy continues to unfold, it becomes clear that the concerns about her leadership style are not just one-off criticisms, but rather part of a broader pattern of questionable decision-making. In Burge's case, the concerns go beyond his lack of qualifications. His history in local law enforcement is marred by controversy. Before being appointed by Henyard, Burge served as police chief in several neighboring towns, including Dixmoor and Harvey. However, his tenure in these positions was plagued by multiple lawsuits and allegations of misconduct. He has been named in at least 4 lawsuits in recent years, many involving accusations of political retaliation and employment disputes. With such a problematic track record, it's difficult to see how Henyard could justify him as the right person for the job, partly when the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board had deemed him inactive, effectively barring him from legally serving as a police officer. And yet Enna remains steadfast in her decision to keep Burge in place, even as the town's leadership and residents grow more frustrated. Critics suggest that Henyard is deliberately surrounding herself with individuals who owe their positions to her, ensuring their loyalty by appointing people with questionable backgrounds who are unlikely to challenge her authority. She may be consolidating her political power, something that could prove to be dangerous for Blish. In this view, the appointment of Burge isn't about finding a qualified leader for the police department, but about building a political alliance that will serve Henyard's personal interests rather than those of the community. That's right, the SPA is using the SSP Commission to prosecute its police president. But this is just one theory. Another perspective is that Henyard thrives on controversy and chaos. Over time, she has built a reputation as a mayor who welcomes drama, whether it's through attention-grabbing outfits during public meetings or by stirring up conflict with political opponents. Henyard's leadership has been marked by a constant spotlight on her, often at the expense of Dalton's residents. Some argue that by keeping Burge in place, Henyard is simply trying to maintain the public focus on herself, using the controversy to further her own political agenda. It's possible that for her, the negative attention is a small price to pay for the opportunity to dominate the conversation and retain control. One resident, Antoinette, voiced her dismay in an interview, saying she is really ruining the town of Doton. We used to have a lot of trees here, and she's taken them down. This seemingly simple observation speaks volume about the growing disillusionment within the community. The loss of trees symbolizes the broader sense of loss many Doton residents feel as they watch their town deteriorate under Henyard leadership. Another resident took it a step further, comparing Henyard's approach to governance to that of a dictator. It's like Venezuela. They remarked, isn't that what they're doing out there with President Nicolas Maduro? His face is everywhere, like on The Dictator, with massive billboards featuring Henyard's face all over the town. It's hard to ignore the self-promotion that has become a hallmark of her administration. She now gets out and literally took pictures of herself at gatherings, suggesting she was having one of her troubles fixed on Trump. While Henyard seems to embrace the spotlight, it is the residents of Dalton who are left to deal with the consequences. The town's finances are in disarray, local businesses are struggling, and the police department is in chaos, with Burge's controversial appointment only adding to the dysfunction. The situation has become a perfect storm of mismanagement and controversy, and many are wondering when it will end. Adding to the turmoil is a letter from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, which not only highlighted Burge's lack of qualifications, but also urged Henyard to remove him from public service altogether until he completed the necessary training. Did Henyard heed the warning? Of course not. The fallout has been swift, with the Board of Trustees now preparing to take the matter back to court. Trustee Jason House, one of Henyard's most outspoken critics, has made it clear that they plan to use the letter as evidence to argue that B should not even be allowed to serve in an interim capacity. This marks just the latest chapter in the ongoing legal battles between Henyard and the board, and it's clear that this conflict shows no signs of resolution anytime soon. As the situation continues to escalate, the question remains, what is Henyard's endgame? Why is she so determined to keep Burge in a position he is clearly unqualified for? One theory, as mentioned earlier, is that Henyard is deliberately surrounding herself with people who owe their positions to her, ensuring that they remain loyal. Another theory suggests that Henyard thrives on chaos and controversy, using these distractions to keep the public's focus on her. Whatever her motivations, it's clear that her leadership style has taken a toll on Dalton, and residents are growing increasingly wary of the constant drama in legal battles. With the next election on the horizon, Henyard may be in for a rude awakening. Trustee Jason House, her challenger in the mayoral race, has already promised a campaign focused on accountability and reform. His message is resonating with many Dalton residents who are eager for a change in leadership. House has made it clear that he is ready to clean up the mess Henyard has left behind, and his promise of a more transparent and responsible government could be just the antidote Dalton needs. However, Henyard is not backing down. She has already announced her bid for re-election, and in a bold statement to her supporters, she compared herself to a controversial former U.S. president, declaring, "Just like Trump, I'm coming in on a landslide." Whether that prediction will come to fruition remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: Dalton's upcoming election will be a pivotal moment in the town's history, one that could determine the future of its leadership and its residents. For now, Burge remains the interim police chief, but his future and Henyard's hang in the balance. The Board of Trustees is preparing for yet another court battle, while Henyard seems resolute in her stance. Will Burge ultimately be removed from his position? Will Henyard face consequences for her controversial decisions, or will she manage to hold on to power against all odds? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear: the situation in Dalton raises serious questions about the role of loyalty in local politics and the dangers of appointing unqualified individuals to key positions of power. The stakes have never been higher. 9/11 now playing Rep. Crockett slams co-president Elon Musk. This guy is the definition of self-dealing. MSNBC. And thanks for watching Punchline Pro, guys. Love you all.